time we saw the eigenvalues and the eigenvectors of a symmetric tensor. So we proved that the eigenvalues of a symmetric tensor are real valued, and for the eigenvectors we considered three cases. So that is lambda 1 is not equal to lambda 2 is not equal to lambda 3 is not equal to lambda 1. In this case, your eigenvectors E1 star, comma E2 star, comma E3 star forms an orthonormal basis. Forms an orthonormal basis, and it is unique, right? Modulo sign reversal, but that sign reversal we are not considering as non-uniqueness. Then for the other case where lambda 1 is not equal to lambda 2 is equal to lambda 3, in this case your E1 star, so if you recall the figure that I drew, your E1 star, which is the eigenvector corresponding to lambda 1, is unique, and then if you take the plane that is perpendicular to E1 star, then E2 star and E3 star, E2 star and E3 star, they can be chosen in the plane perpendicular to this first one. So the eigenvector corresponding to lambda 1 is unique, but the eigenvectors corresponding to lambda 2 and lambda 3 are not unique. So any vector actually, so what we showed last time is that any vector in the plane perpendicular to E1 star is an eigenvector corresponding to this repeated eigenvalue, and hence we can choose these E2 star and E3 star as mutually orthogonal to each other and also orthogonal to E1 star. So that in this particular basis, your matrix of components S star is equal to lambda 1, 0, 0, 0, lambda 2, 0, 0, 0, lambda 3. So of course in this case lambda 3 is equal to lambda 2, but what is important is that you can always find an orthonormal basis such that the components of the tensor in that particular basis is the diagonal, is a diagonal matrix with lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3 along the diagonal and 0 on the off diagonal terms. Then suppose if you have lambda 1 is equal to lambda 2 is equal to lambda 3 is equal to lambda, then in this particular case your S is always of the form lambda times identity. And in that case also any three orthonormal vectors you can choose as a basis, and if you express S in that basis, again you will get lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3 along the diagonal. Of course in this particular case all the lambdas will be the same. So to summarize, basically we can always choose an orthonormal basis such that in that orthonormal basis the components of S can be written as a diagonal matrix. Yes? So if I now write the components, right, T is equal to Tij, Ei, dyadic Ej, right. So now you take this Ei and the Ej's to be these Ei stars. Okay, so take Ei to be E1 star, E2 star, E3 star. Okay, so this is the basis, the principal basis I choose as the basis for expressing the components of my symmetric tensor. Okay, so now we have seen that in this particular basis your S11 will be equal to lambda 1, S12, so let me call it a star, S12 star will be 0, S13 star will be equal to 0, and so on. Okay, so if I express the components in this particular form, right, so then I can write S as equal to lambda 1 E1 star dyadic E1 star plus lambda 2 times E2 star dyadic E2 star plus lambda 3 times E3 star dyadic E3 star. So this is a very important result, okay, and it is known as the spectral decomposition. So I hope it is clear how we got this. So just simply I am taking S11 times E1 star dyadic E1 star plus S12 E1 star dyadic E2 star. Just I am applying this formula to a symmetric tensor, and since the components are given by S11 star equal to lambda 1, S12 star equal to 0, and so on, so then I will get this particular representation. And this representation is extremely useful for proving various kinds of formulae or various kinds of properties of symmetric tensors. Okay, so this, as I said, is going to be a very key representation of symmetric tensors. A lot of proofs related to symmetric tensors will rely on this critical identity here, this lambda 1 star, lambda 1 times E1 star. So if you want to write this in summation notation, then you have to write it like this: lambda I EI star dyadic EI star. See, here we do not use the summation convention, okay, because see, this index I is repeated 3 times, and then if I should not drop the summation sign in this particular case, because then it would be a violation of the summation convention. So we have set the summation convention that the dummy index should be repeated twice and twice only, right? So here it is repeated 3 times. So I will put in the summation sign explicitly. Whenever there is an index which is repeated 3 times, then I will put the summation sign. So we can write S in this particular form also. So this is known as the spectral resolution or spectral decomposition of a symmetric tensor. Spectral resolution or spectral decomposition. So these are just various terms that are used for this one. Okay, then what about the uniqueness of this spectral decomposition? So if again, let us consider the 3 cases. So if lambda 1 not equal to lambda 2, not equal to lambda 3, not equal to lambda 1, then the EI star are unique, correct? That we have already seen. And so in that particular case, your spectral resolution is also unique. Okay, then now let's consider the next case, that if lambda 1 not equal to lambda 2 is equal to lambda 3, see now the individual E2 star and the E3 star are no longer unique, okay, but it turns out that the spectral resolution is still unique. So let us try to show that. So this is S is equal to lambda 1 times E1 star plus lambda 2 times E2 star dyadic E2 star plus E3 star dyadic E3 star, right? So because now in this particular case your lambda 2 is equal to lambda 3, okay, and we also have the result that if you recall, we had shown that I is equal to Ek star dyadic Ek star, correct? So that is equal to E1 star dyadic E1 star plus E2 star dyadic E2 star plus E3 star dyadic E3 star. Yes. Lambda, sorry, yeah, correct. This, thanks. This should be E1 star dyadic E1 star, sorry, yeah, E1 star plus, yeah, thank you very much. Yes. So, so in this particular case, you can see that this E2 star dyadic E2 star plus E3 star dyadic E3 star can also be written as I minus E1 star dyadic E1 star, right? So let me write it in this particular way here. So this is equal to lambda 1 E1 star dyadic E1 star plus lambda 2 times identity minus E1 star dyadic E1 star. So, yes, and now you can see that this E1 star is unique, right? So that is the eigenvector that is corresponding to the distinct eigenvalue that is unique, and then so now you can see that everything is unique. So although this E2 star and E3 star individually are not unique, but finally the spectral resolution, so you can think that there may be some cancellations occurring or whatever, finally you get a spectral decomposition that is unique, right? And then the last case is where all the eigenvalues are repeated, so the third case. So in the third case you have S, so this is lambda 1 is equal to lambda 2 is equal to lambda 3 is equal to lambda, and in that case we have that S is equal to lambda I. We have seen this. So in this particular case, so the identity tensor is also unique. So in this particular case also you have uniqueness of the spectral decomposition. So to summarize, although the eigenvectors corresponding to repeated eigenvalues need not be unique, but in all cases, finally your spectral resolution or spectral decomposition of a symmetric tensor is unique. And as I said that this will be used many times in order to show various kinds of properties of So we'll start with a new topic, which is differentiation of tensors. Of tensors. So actually one can give a very rigorous treatment of this differentiation, but for the purposes of this class, we will just define a del operator. Okay, so this del operator I will define as del by del xi acting on something times ei. So the way this is to be interpreted is that suppose this del is acting on some scalar. Okay, so let's call it as suppose some phi or something like that. Then basically the phi will sit here. Okay, so this del by del xi is not operating on the ei. I mean that. So basically whatever object you are putting here, so it is operating on that. This ei, because it is just a vector, so this is how we define the del operator, and we will now use various properties of the alternate tensor and the canonical delta in order to show various identities which related to differentiation of tensors here. So first let me just define a few objects which are going to be very useful in this context. So first let us define the gradient of a vector, or first just the del phi itself. So that is just del phi is equal to del phi by del xi times ei. So this is the gradient of a scalar. Okay, so del phi is just the gradient of a scalar that is defined in this particular way. So if I write it in a vector form, so that is just del phi by del x1, del phi by del x2, and del phi by del x3. So this is these are just the components of this vector. So what you will note is that differentiation will raise the order of the tensor by 1. Okay, so that is because, so suppose if you are differentiating a scalar, it will become a vector. If you are differentiating a vector, it will become a second order tensor. If you are differentiating a second order tensor, it will become a third order tensor. So this you will see that is because the position vector itself is a vector. So that is the reason that the order of the tensor goes up by 1. Yes, so I will define now the gradient of a vector. So that is del v ij. So this I will define as del vi by del xj. If I want to write this in tensor form, then I will write this as del v is equal to del vi by del xj ei dyadic ej. I will write it in this particular way. Yes. Okay. Using this definition of the gradient of a vector, I will define the divergence of a vector, which is simply the trace of this del of v. So divergence of v. So divergence of v. So we will denote this as del dot v. So del dot v. So this is, so del dot v is nothing but del vi by del xi. So that is actually nothing but the trace of this del of v. So this is also equal to trace of del of v. Okay, so you can see that the components are del vi by del xj, and then for the trace you will put the index j as I itself. So you will get this particular del vi by del xi. So that is defined as the divergence of a vector v. Yes. Then let us define the divergence of a second order tensor. So divergence of T, so divergence of T, so that is just, we'll call it as del dot T, so that is how we will write this. So this is the ith component, so this is del T ij by del xj. Okay, so this is how I will define the components of a second order tensor, the divergence of a second order tensor. I will define in this. So actually, if you see, there is a summation over the j. So suppose if I want to write del dot T1, then that is equal to del T1 by del x1, sorry, 1 1, plus del T12 by del x2 plus del T13 by del x3. Okay, so this is how, and then you can write the other component. So let me just write it for the second one also. Del dot 2 will be del 2 1 by del x1 plus del 2 by del x2 plus del T23 by del x3. Okay, so and similarly you can write the third component also. So actually you will see that the equations of equilibrium for an elastic solid will have this component. So the T will stand for the stress tensor. Okay, so that we will come to at a later stage. One very important thing you have to remember is that all these definitions that I am writing are for a Cartesian coordinate system. Okay, so that is very, very important to note that this is all for a Cartesian. That means x1, x2, or E1, E2. Let us call it E1, E2, and E3. Okay, so this is so this cannot be. So these formulae that I am writing in indicial notation should not be extended to, let us say, a curvilinear coordinate system. For example, suppose if you had something like this, that this is your, let me just draw, so this is suppose ER and suppose this is E theta, then you cannot extend these formulae to, so you cannot simply write it as del TRR by del R plus del TR theta by del theta. So you should not extend it to a curvilinear coordinate system. So this is, all these indicial notation formulae that I am writing are strictly for a Cartesian coordinate system. And then, so we can then later on convert from these formulae to the ones for a curvilinear basis. But that is not a very straightforward process. So at this stage, let us not get into how to write the components of all of these things, that del dot tau, del dot t, or del v, or del dot v. We will not worry about how to write the components of this for a curvilinear coordinate system. So if required in assignments or in the exams, I will give you those components in that particular curvilinear coordinate system. But you should be familiar about how to write these components in a Cartesian coordinate system. Yes. All right. So so we'll move on. So we'll now define the curl of a vector. So write that here. So del cross V. So del cross V I component you can write as epsilon I j k del V k by del x j. Okay. So you can see, this is very, very similar. So this notation that we are using, this del cross V, it is very similar to the cross product between two vectors. Okay, so so just to give you an idea, so suppose this part I can, if I treat del like a vector operator, then I can write it as epsilon I j k del j v k, correct? And then this del j is nothing but del by del xj. So you can write this as epsilon I j k del v k by del xj. So loosely speaking, you can think of this as an operator that is acting on something on the right hand side here, right? Okay. So in that sense, you can think of this as a vector operator. So this del cross V, you can write it in this way. Finally, you get this particular expression here. Then the Laplacian operator, Laplacian, that is del square. Okay, so that is just del square of phi. So let us write del square of phi is del dot of del phi. Okay. So see, del phi is a vector, and so it is the divergence of this particular vector. So how do I write this now in indicial notation? So this is nothing but del square phi by del xi del xi. I can write it in this particular way. See, because the ith component of del phi is del phi by del xi, and then del dot, so that you can think of as del I times del phi I. Correct? You can think of this as del I of del phi I, correct? And del phi I is del phi by del xi, and then this will give me another del by del xi. So write it in this way. Now many students actually they write this wrongly as del square phi by del xi square or something like that they will write. Okay, so please don't make this mistake. So you should not write it in this particular way. See, because there is a summation over the I. So if you write it like this, then I becomes like a free index. Okay, so you should never write it in this particular way. You are supposed to write it correctly like this only, right? Because I is a dummy index, so you have to show that there is a dummy index and that there is a summation. So basically, if I write this in a Cartesian coordinate system, then that is del square phi by del x1 square plus del square phi by del x2 square plus del square phi by del x3 square. So here I can write it as x1 square, x2 square, etc., but not when you are writing it in indicial notation. See, because as I said that it's a dummy index, and so you have to write it in a proper way here. Yes. So let us look at some identities now that we can prove using this using the usual formulae that we have derived for the alternate tensor, the Kronecker delta, and so on. So you must have seen these identities during your undergraduate days, but you may not have learned how to prove them. So now we will show how to prove some of these identities using the Kronecker delta and the alternate tensor, and so on and so forth. So let us start with something very simple. So suppose if I want to show, first identity that I will show is half of del of u dot u is equal to del u transpose times u. So let us try to show this. So here, see, now this del is a vector operator. So if I suppose write this as half of, so let me just write the ith component of this. So let us write it as half of del of u dot u, the whole thing, the jth component. Okay, so see, so this I can write as half of del of ui by del xj, right? Because so either you write it in this way, or you can put an ej. You can exclude this j and then you can put an ej here. But one thing you have to be careful about is that if you start with a scalar on the left hand side, then you should have a scalar on the right hand side. If you start with a vector on the left hand side, you should have a vector on the right side. So what I am trying to say is that don't mix, that don't start with a vector and then because you are using indicial notation, don't drop the ej if you are dropping this j and so on. So be consistent between the left hand side and the right hand side as far as their properties are concerned here. Now just use the product rule of differentiation. So this is equal to half of this I can write as ui times del ui by del xj plus ui times del ui by del xj. Right? And then this is equal to, so this is the same object. So you will get that this is equal to ui times del ui by del xj. Right? And now you can see that this is nothing but, suppose if I write this as del u transpose, this is the jith component of that. Right? See, so let me just explain this. The del u ijth component or ijth component is equal to del ui by del xj, correct? So here, if you switch the indices, right, then you get the transpose. So you get, so del ui by del xj can be written as the jith component of del u transpose here, and then that times ui, correct? So basically this is nothing but, so this is equal to del u transpose times u, the jth component. So this is how you can write it. And so now the jth component, and this is the jth component. So you get that half of del of u dot u is equal to this del u transpose times u. So this is the identity that we wanted to prove. So we'll prove something more complicated now. So let me see which identity I can prove. Yes, so let us prove del cross del phi is equal to 0. Okay, so this is a very, very famous identity and it is used in a lot of places. So let us try to show this particular identity here. So del cross del phi is equal to 0. So this is, as I said, a very, very famous identity. So let us try to prove this. So basically this is a curl of this particular vector. Del phi is a vector. This is a curl of a vector, and so this is a vector 0. So if I can write this in indicia, so let me start with the left hand side. So this is del cross del phi. So this is equal to, so let me write this as the ith component of this. So that is epsilon ijk del j times del phi k. So you can, just to start getting used to this, maybe you can write it like this. Later on you can probably skip some of these steps here. So this is epsilon ijk, and this I will write as del by del xj, and this I will write as del phi by del xk, because that is the kth component of this one here, right? So finally what I have is that this is equal to epsilon ijk del square phi by del xj del xk. Now we want to show that this particular object is 0. Okay, so now these are some standard tricks that you have to get used to. So here the trick is that you interchange the j and the k. See, j and k are basically dummy indices. So I can call j as k and I can call k as j. Okay, so the trick that I will use here is, this is epsilon. Now I k j del square phi by del xk del xj. Right? That is because, so what I have done is that j I am interchanging with k. So this is the step. This is the critical step in this particular proof here. Now, your order of this partial differentiation is not important, right? So because if you see del square phi by del x1 del x2 is equal to del square phi by del x2 del x1, correct? So I can interchange the order of this one here. And here also, if I write ijk, then I will get a minus sign, because if you recall our rule, any clockwise permutation will lead to +1 and an anti-clockwise thing will lead to a -1. So from here now what we get is minus of epsilon ijk del square phi by del xj del xk. Correct? And so this particular object that we started out with, this particular object is equal to minus of the same object, hence it is equal to 0. So this implies now that del cross del phi is equal to the 0 vector. So as I said, this is a very, very useful result, and we'll use it in a lot of places here. Yes. Then we'll move on. So next identity we will show. So we will try to show that del cross u is equal to del of del dot u minus del square u. This is another identity. So if I write now, so let me start with the ith component of this. So del cross u, the ith component of this. So again, I will write it in as epsilon I j k del j del cross u k. Yeah, I can write it in this particular way, just as if this del is like a vector. But remember that it's a vector operator. So unlike a vector, see, the vector can just need not act on something. But here, this is a vector operator, so it has to act on something. So this del j is acting on whatever is appearing on the right hand side of that particular operator here. So this is epsilon I j k, epsilon k m n, epsilon k m n, then this is del j, and this I can write as del u, just write it as del m, del m u n, acting on this particular way. Now one important thing to remember here is that this epsilon can be taken outside the differentiation sign. That is because these epsilons are just constants. They are either 1, -1 or 0. So we can take them outside the derivative sign whenever we are writing these epsilons. So here actually the epsilon kmn was inside this derivative sign, but we can take it outside because that, as I said that. And then this you can rewrite now. This you can write as epsilon kij, correct? Because that is our usual this one kmn, and this I can write as del square un by del xj del xm. Now use the epsilon delta identity on this particular object here. So that is equal to delta im delta jn minus delta in delta jm times del square un by del xj del xm. Now use the substitution operator property. So this is equal to del square uj by del xi del xj minus del square ui by del xj del xj del xj. So this is the result that we get. Now you can see that this object, let me rewrite it here. So I can write this particular object as this del square of uj by del xi del xj, I can write as del by del xi of del uj by del xj. And this is nothing but del dot u. Right? That is just because that is del uj by del xj is just the trace of del u itself. So that is just del dot u. And this particular object is nothing but del square u. So this operator, remember, is the del square operator, and so this actually is the component of a vector. So that is the ith component of that one. So you can write this as equal to, so here this part here I can write as equal to del of del dot u minus del square u, the ith component. So we started out with this ith component and then we have shown this. So basically that proves this particular identity here. So another important thing to remember at this particular stage is that do not try to memorize any of these identities. Okay, so the whole purpose behind this exercise is that you should be able to derive these identities using these properties like this epsilon ijk. So actually even I never recall, any of these identities. So if you ask me after a few days, I would have forgotten these identities. But what I am trying to show here is that in a few minutes you can just derive any of these identities. And so that is the expectation in this class, that using these properties of the alternate tensor and the canonical delta and so on and so forth, you should be able to derive these kind of identities, right? It's fairly simple. It's just if you know indicial notation very well, and if you know the definitions of the curl, the divergence of a vector or a tensor and so on, then you should be able to derive these identities. Okay, so that is one very important point, that do not try to memorize any of these things here. Yes, then one more maybe, just to get the hang of this. So this is another famous identity which we will try to prove now. So this is del dot of del cross u is equal to 0. This is also another very famous identity. So this, so LHS is equal to, so this is actually a curl of a vector, and then it's a divergence of a vector, and so this is a scalar 0 now in this particular case here. So this is epsilon I j k times del cross del by del xi of del uk by del xj. So this, I mean, I've directly written it as, so the del dot, so that is this del by del xi, then del cross u, the ith component, is epsilon I j k times del uk by del xj. So I have pulled out the epsilon I j k outside of the gradient operator here, right? So then after this, again, it is very, very similar to the one of the previous proofs. So this is del square uk by del xi del xj. Now in this particular case, the I and the j can be interchanged, right? So this is equal to epsilon jik times del square uk by del xj del xi. So here I am interchanging the I and the j. So basically, you know, wherever the index, so you can see that these two indices, whatever are the two indices here, if they occur with this epsilon symbol, then that will go to 0, because you can do this interchange trick, and now again use the fact that del square uk by del xj del xi is del square uk by del xi del xj, so that order can be interchanged, whereas here it will give a minus sign. So this is minus epsilon I j k del square uk by del xi del xj. So you started out with this particular object, and now you have shown that it is minus of that same object, and hence that is equal to 0. So this is so this implies now that del dot del cross u is equal to 0. So these are some of the identities which are used very widely here. Probably just one last one here, maybe one last identity I will show. Let's see. Okay, so if I want to find out an expression for u cross del cross u. Okay, so this, so we'll not say what it is, we'll just try to show what result we get here. So this is epsilon I j k uj times del cross u, the kth component. So this I am writing now the ith component of this particular thing. So this is epsilon I j k. This will give me uj, and then this will give me del cross uk. Then now again expand the del cross uk as so this I can write as now epsilon I j k, then uj, then this I can write as epsilon m n k times del m un, and then now use the epsilon delta identity. So here I have already, I mean, instead of writing it as kmn, I have already written it as mnk, so that I can directly apply the epsilon delta identity. So this is delta im delta jn minus delta in delta I goes with the m, j goes with n, so this is jm, and then that is times uj del un by del xm, and then now use the substitution operator property. So this is un times del xn, del un by del xi minus um times del ui by del xm, and this you can write as half of del of u dot u minus del u times u, the ith component here. So basically then what you get is that u cross del cross u is equal to half of del of u dot u minus del u times u. So just a word of explanation for this particular case. This is very similar to the first identity that I proved today, right? So that you can directly see, so that is okay. And then here, this del ui by del u im component is del ui by del xm, correct? And then that times um, correct? So that you are multiplying now by um, and this is getting multiplied by um. So that is exactly this particular object. So again, one other important thing I have mentioned this many times is that when you are writing the initial notation, it doesn't matter whether you write this as u times um times del ui by del xm. But when you are writing the tensorial version, for example, you have to write it in this particular way. So you should not write this part here as u times del u. Okay, so this is wrong. So just writing it. So so when you write things in, when you are converting, see, when you are writing it in initial notation, the order is not important. Whether you write it as um times del ui by del xm, or you write it as del ui by del xm times um. There the order is not so very important. But when you write it in when you convert it back to tensorial notation, then you should write it in this particular way. That means the order is very, very important. You cannot write it as u times del u. Okay. So here basically when you write it as del u times u, it is a second order tensor that is operating on a vector and it is giving a vector. Okay. So that is the proper way of writing this. So even here also, for example, u dot u is a scalar, and then you are operating on a with a vector operator. So this whole thing is a vector. So this is a one vector minus another vector, and then this is a curl of a vector. This is a vector with another vector, the cross product between two vectors. So this is also a vector. So what I am trying to say is that the way you write it is very, very important. So let me give one example, which is a very famous example actually, the way you can write things in a very improper way. So let me just give you one example of that. So actually in your fluid mechanics, you will see that a lot of times they will write it as, let me just write it there. So you may not have come to that part yet, but at some stage you will. So they will write it like this. Okay. So this is the convective part of the acceleration. So they will write it in this particular way. But as I said, that this is not the proper way of writing it tensorially. So the way, actually the proper way of writing this would be actually del u times u. Okay, so that, like, just like in the example that I just erased, so it is a second order tensor which is multiplying a vector to give a vector. So here many times actually they will not even put the bracket. So okay, at least if you put the bracket, then it will make at least some sense that you are writing this as some u dot del as an operator acting on u. But if you don't put the parenthesis, then it is actually quite meaningless if you write it like this. Because see, this del u is a second order tensor, the u is a vector. So it does not make any sense to write it like this. It appears as if you are taking a dot product of a vector with a second order tensor, which is completely incorrect. So at least you have to put a parenthesis, but even better than this is to write it in the correct way tensorially, in this particular way here. Okay, so that is something which you have to bear in mind, that while writing all of these things, it is better to follow the tensorial conventions and write things in a properly consistent way. So you may say that this does not cause any confusion, then it may be fine. But suppose you wanted to linearize these terms, okay, then you will see that when you write it in this particular way, the linearization is much simpler rather than if you try to write this. It will be very confusing to linearize an object like this. Okay, so you will see some of the advantages of this at a later stage, but right now all I am saying is that it is better to write things in a tensorial way. So I think we will stop at this particular stage.